Hi, this is Jen from Sacred Waters, and I am here to tell you a piece of our story. We every 6 months at Sacred Waters we change our theme and our prayer, and we prayed last spring and summer for Oshun, for the fresh water in the world, and this has turned out to be an incredible blessing in miraculous ways. And the story is pretty long, so I'm going to tell it in parts. And the first part begins far before we actually prayed to Oshun, but it becomes really important later. So every good story starts with Eshu. And about 2 years ago, Eshu gave me the idea, or the suggestion maybe, to start praying not only for the roads where I should be walking to be opened, or the places where I need to go for the way to be open, but also for the ways in which I shouldn't go to be closed. So I started praying this way with Eshu. Just before that, I had done some tax planning because for that year, Sacred Waters needed a little extra money based on the projections and the budget in order to get past its break-even point. So I did some tax planning with my accountant, and a $25,000 refund was supposed to come early in the year. And it didn't arrive. So we called the IRS, and they claimed that the paperwork was the wrong form. And we went through this whole process for many months about whether it was the right form, if it had arrived on time. There were like 3 or 4 issues. Every time we responded to them, it takes 6 weeks or more for it to be reviewed, and then we would get a response in the mail. Couldn't speak to anybody on the phone. I went through a process with my landlord of letting him know what was going on, but that I would likely not be paying the rent. And then eventually I didn't pay the rent for a couple of months. And so I, as most of you know, maybe we did a Kickstarter, and we raised $30,000 in 2 weeks in order to cover the shortfall from the check. Which was an answer to prayer in some ways, well, in many ways, but it was an answer to a bigger prayer that we had for a while of creating a really genuine, close community. And for sure, all of the people who contributed to that campaign, one, thank you again so much, and two, they all became a much closer part of the Sacred Waters community and generated this larger connection that we had been hoping to generate. So that was a beautiful part of the process. But what happened after that is our projections didn't come true. They had until that point, and towards the end of the year, we were still a little bit short of money. And I didn't know what to do. I was praying a lot about, is this one of the roads that's closing that I'm not supposed to be on? The Sacred Waters need to close. And and a friend called me one day and asked me if I would like to come back to work in finance. I had left a finance career 3 years before to start Sacred Waters. And at first I really thought, I'm just going to stick with Sacred Waters. I didn't want to do that in the world anymore, and I wanted to use my skills for helping the world in a different way. So I really wasn't sure, but I really respect him and like him a lot. We had worked together before, so I agreed to go into the office and meet with him. And when I went into the office, everywhere in the building, there are fish tanks. And so because of the water, and specifically the salt water there, I really started paying attention. Like, there's a bunch of water here in this place, and what's going on? What is it maybe trying to say? So, longer story short, I eventually said yes, I will go back to work. And at first I was feeling a little bit like, I don't know if this is the right thing, but let's see. And just before I started, they let me know that just because of a technicality, basically, I would be working in a slightly different group than him, even though he was meant to be my boss, and that I would be working for Bloomberg NEF. And I didn't know what Bloomberg NEF was, and I didn't find out until after I started working, really. And I found out later that BNEF is a research arm of Bloomberg that has the mission of helping the world transition to a cleaner energy economy, among other things now, but it was founded with that mission. And so it just really felt good to be working on accident for a company that has a mission of doing good in the world, helping the climate, supporting green initiatives. And so I was really pleased, really relieved, and felt really good about the work that I was going to be doing there. And about 2 weeks after I started, the tax check arrived. And I had been told by my accountant, I had called the IRS myself, I waited on hold for 8 hours, that it wasn't coming, the wrong paperwork had been filed, that there was no possibility for appeal, none of that. It took 11 months of that process. So I wasn't even expecting it, and it came without a letter, without anything one day, just a check. And I honestly went straight to the bank because I didn't even know if it was going to deposit, if it would bounce. But it did, and so it was a beautiful full circle. And I realized in that moment that this entire mix-up with the tax check had given me another gift, that I was supposed to be, at work, basically, again, with BNEF. And I thought that that was the end of that cycle, that story, but it wasn't. It was just the beginning. And the second part of the story I'll tell you in the next video, but it has to do with the beginning of our prayer for Oshun and all that came because of that prayer. And thank you to Eshu.